Charles sat in his luxurious penthouse, staring out at the bright city lights of Lagos. The skyline stretched endlessly before him, a testament to the wealth and power he had built from nothing. His fingers gripped a glass of expensive whiskey, but he wasn't drinking. He was thinking. His heart was heavy. His mind, restless. The past had a way of creeping back in, no matter how high he climbed. And tonight, it had come knocking louder than ever. 3 years ago. Lagos never stopped moving. The city pulsed with energy, dreams made and shattered in the same breath. Beneath the towering skyscrapers and flashing billboards, life moved fast. Too fast for those who couldn't keep up. Charles sat on a worn-out roadside bench, his shoulders hunched, his once crisp shirt wrinkled beyond recognition. Dust clung to his shoes, the leather cracked from months of struggle. His fingers gripped a crumpled eviction notice, the words stabbing at him like tiny knives. The landlord's voice still echoed in his ears. No money, no room. Get out. A week ago, he had a place to sleep. A month ago, he had hope. A year ago, he had love. Now, he had nothing. His throat tightened as he reached for his phone, scrolling to a name that once made his heart race, Roseline. His last chance. The woman who had promised forever. The phone rang. Once. Twice. Then silence. He tried again. Straight to voicemail. Swallowing hard, he did the only thing left, he went to her house. When she opened the door, dressed in a silk robe, her expression wasn't one of concern, but irritation. Charles, what are you doing here? I need you. His voice cracked. Her lips curled into a smirk. Need me? Charles, let's be honest, you can't even take care of yourself. What do you expect me to do? His heart pounded. We were supposed to be in this together. She laughed. Sharp. Cold. Merciless. You expect me to suffer with you? Please. I need a man who can provide, not a charity case. She stepped back, her voice dripping with finality. You're just a disappointment. And just like that, the door slammed in his face. The weight of those words crushed him. You're just a disappointment. He stood frozen, the night air cutting through his thin shirt. He had lost his business, his home, and now, the woman who had vowed to stand by him. But what Roseline didn't know was that life had a cruel sense of irony. Because Charles wouldn't stay poor forever. Life had knocked Charles down, but it hadn't destroyed him. He worked like a madman, taking on any job that paid, learning every trick he could. He invested in stocks, built connections, and mastered the art of making money. Soon, the pieces of his shattered life began to fit together again. Within 2 years, he was no longer the struggling young man begging for love. He was Charles Rawlings, one of the most powerful millionaires in Nigeria. A name people whispered in admiration. A man who now sat in boardrooms with the same kind of people who once dismissed him. And yet, even with all the wealth, all the success, one thing remained unfinished. Roseline. She had destroyed him without a second thought, tossed him aside like trash. And now, she was no more in his life. But not if he could help it. His mind raced with thoughts of revenge, of making Roseline regret every decision she had ever made. Then, as if the universe wasn't finished with its surprises, something unexpected happened. A neatly sealed envelope landed beside him. A stranger had dropped it. Before Charles could react, the man disappeared into the sea of moving bodies. Frowning, Charles picked up the envelope and ripped it open. The message inside was short but burned through his veins like fire. Your Roseline is finally going to wed tomorrow. His breath hitched. His eyes skimmed over the rest of the letter, but the words blurred. It didn't matter who had sent it. The only thing that mattered was the reality of those words. She was getting married. Tomorrow. The news hit like a dagger to his soul. The woman who had once promised him forever, the woman who had left him in the dust, was moving on. And yet, She wasn't marrying a billionaire. Not a powerful businessman. Not someone greater than Charles. Just another man. A bitter laugh escaped his lips. So, this was it. She had left him because he was not good enough, because he had nothing. And yet, she was settling for a nobody. He had been discarded for nothing. His jaw clenched as he stared at the invitation on the table in front of him. It was addressed to him personally. A cruel joke? A mistake? Or had Roseline sent it on purpose? Did she want him to see her happiness with his own eyes? His fingers curled into a fist, nails digging into his palm. He wasn't the type of man to sit back and let someone make a fool of him. No. If Roseline wanted him at her wedding, he would go. But he wouldn't go alone. A plan began to form in his mind, wild, unpredictable, filled with dark satisfaction. He would bring someone with him. Someone shocking. Someone who would make every guest at that wedding turn their heads in disbelief. Someone who would make Rosaline's perfect wedding, not so perfect anymore. But who? Charles leaned back in his chair, tapping his fingers against the glass. He needed someone unexpected. Someone who would make Roseline doubt herself the moment she laid eyes on them. And then, as if fate itself was playing its hand, he knew exactly who he needed. A slow, knowing smile spread across his face. Tomorrow, Roseline would regret every decision she had ever made. Charles's mind raced as he tapped his fingers against the polished glass of his whiskey tumbler. He needed someone unexpected, someone who would shake Roseline to her core the moment she laid eyes on them. And then, like a flash of lightning, the perfect name struck him, Gloria. He had seen her countless times on the streets of Yaba, a homeless woman surviving on scraps, but there was something about her, something raw, unbroken, and filled with quiet defiance. He had given her money before, watched how she stretched it for days, and how she always had a dignified thank you, despite her situation. Yes. She was the one. Charles stood abruptly, grabbed his car keys, and drove straight to Yaba. The streets were bustling with people, traders calling out prices, buses honking impatiently, the ever-present Lagos noise filling the air. But his eyes scanned for one thing. And there she was. Gloria sat on a worn-out mat near the junction, her tattered scarf barely covering her messy hair. When she spotted Charles walking towards her, her face lit up. She had come to expect him. He was the only one who didn't just toss money at her like an obligation. He was different. He never asked why she was here, never pitied her, never looked at her with disgust. And each time he came, she could count on having enough to eat for at least a week. She grinned, already stretching her hands forward to receive her usual blessing. But today was different. Charles crouched down, his sharp gaze studying her. "I have a proposition for you," he said smoothly. Gloria frowned slightly. "Proposition?" He nodded, a knowing smile playing on his lips. "Come home with me. Clean up. Rest. And tomorrow, we're going somewhere you will love to go." There was something unsettling in the way he said it, but Gloria didn't hesitate. No one had ever offered her anything beyond loose change and fleeting pity. She swallowed hard. "Do we?" Charles smirked. "We do." She didn't think twice. She grabbed her only belongings, an old, torn bag filled with clothes that barely qualified as rags, and followed him. The night before Rosaline's wedding, Charles sat in his penthouse, watching Gloria as she stood by the floor-to-ceiling window. The city lights reflected off the glass, illuminating her in a way that made her look almost unrecognizable from the woman he had found in Yaba. Gloria had taken a long, warm bath, the first real bath she'd had in years. Charles had given her new clothes, a place to sleep, and a hot meal. But more than that, he had given her something she had lost long ago, hope. She turned to him, her eyes searching. "Why are you doing this?" Charles leaned back in his chair, a slow smile forming on his lips. "Because tomorrow, we're going to show Roseline that the people she discarded were never meant to stay beneath her feet." Gloria said nothing for a while. She simply stared at him, processing his words. Then, a slow understanding spread across her face. She nodded. I'm ready. The following morning, the penthouse was a whirlwind of activity. A team of professional stylists arrived, their arms full of designer gowns, expensive perfumes, and shimmering jewelry. Gloria had never been pampered in her life. The sensation of fingers running through her thick hair, shaping it into elegant curls, was foreign. The feeling of silk against her skin was a luxury she had never imagined. But when she looked at her reflection in the mirror, she hardly recognized herself. She was stunning. The dirty-faced beggar from Yaba had vanished. In her place stood a woman of grace and power, a woman who could make heads turn. Charles stood behind her, his hands in his pockets, watching. Perfect. The wedding was being held at one of Lagos' most exclusive hotels, a grand venue filled with Lagos elite. Charles and Gloria arrived in a sleek black Rolls-Royce, the car pulling up to the entrance in slow, deliberate elegance. As the valet opened the door, Gloria stepped out first, the golden silk of her dress flowing around her like liquid light. She walked with effortless grace, her heels clicking softly against the marble floor. The guests turned. The murmurs began. Who is she? She looks like a goddess. Wait, isn't that Charles Rawlings? Roseline had wanted Charles to see her happiness. She had wanted him to feel small. But as the whispers spread like wildfire, it was clear that she had underestimated him. Charles walked beside Gloria, his hand resting lightly on her lower back as they made their way inside. The grand ballroom was already filled with guests, the air thick with the scent of fresh roses and expensive cologne. At the far end of the room, beneath a canopy of white flowers, stood Roseline. She was laughing, surrounded by bridesmaids, glowing in her wedding dress. But as her eyes swept across the crowd, taking in the faces of her guests, they landed on Charles. And then, they landed on Gloria. Her smile faltered. Her breath hitched. Gloria held her gaze, her lips curling into a slow, deliberate smile. Recognition dawned in Rosaline's eyes. Horror followed. She knew exactly who Gloria was. And in that moment, she realized, this wasn't going to be the wedding she had planned. This was going to be a nightmare. Just then Roseline had a memory flashback. Because Gloria wasn't just a random homeless woman. She was as much a victim of Roseline as Charles was. She closed her eyes, and the memories came rushing back. Gloria had once been young, hopeful, and deeply in love. At 16, she had given her heart to a boy named Daniel. He was her safe place, her dream, her everything. They had whispered about the future, about escaping the struggles of their youth and building something beautiful together. But dreams had a way of being stolen. Roseline stole hers. Roseline, the hot, sophisticated girl with an air of superiority, had set her sights on Daniel. She was wealthy, beautiful, and calculating. And what Roseline wanted, Roseline took. Gloria had tried to fight for her love, pleaded with Roseline to leave Daniel alone. She had made one mistake. She had confronted Roseline in public. The cold stare Roseline had given her before smirking, the way she had laughed, mocking, cruel. Then, without warning, she had grabbed a bucket of dirty water from a roadside vendor and poured it all over Gloria's head. Gloria had gasped, humiliated, shaking as the filth clung to her clothes. But Roseline wasn't done. She had slapped her, shoved her to the ground, and with the help of her friends, beat her mercilessly. And Daniel? He had done nothing. He had stood there, watching as Gloria begged for mercy, before finally turning his back on her and walking away, hand in hand with Roseline. That day, Gloria had lost everything. She had no family, no home, and no one to turn to. She had been left to wander the streets, begging for survival, while Roseline lived the life she was supposed to have.